We created 15,000 new jobs. We brought out the position where we have 800,000 new manufacturing jobs. But there's more to be done. There's more to be done. Working class people are still in trouble.
We have the greatest economy in the history of our country. He has not done a good job. He's done a poor job, and inflation's killing our country.
A focus on the economy kicked off the nearly 2-hour presidential debate Thursday night. The event began in an undiplomatic fashion. Candidates did not shake hands or even acknowledge each other from the moment they walked on stage. The historic debate, the first of the campaign season, was peppered with insults hurled from each candidate throughout the night. The moderators continually tried to get both Biden and Trump to stay focused on answering their questions, but many times the discussion devolved into rants against one another. At points, it got personal. President Biden calling out Trump's felony convictions in New York, Trump blasting Biden's son, Hunter's felony conviction, and alleged that Biden could be charged and convicted of crimes after he leaves office. Some of the main topics tackled included abortion, immigration, healthcare, foreign relations, and war. Both President Biden and former President Trump shared sharply different visions on virtually every core issue.
As far as Russia and Ukraine, if we had a real president, the president that knew, that was respected by Putin, he would have never invaded Ukraine.
All that money we give Ukraine are from weapons we make here in the United States. We give them the weapons, not the money at this point. And our NATO allies have produced as much funding for Ukraine as we have. That's why we're strong.
President Trump claimed the war in Ukraine and the Hamas attack in Israel would never have happened if he were in charge. He also blasted Biden's withdrawal from Afghanistan. President Biden affirmed his position on both deadly wars, reiterating Israel's endorsement of the U.S. plan to resolve the Israel-Hamas conflict and his support of Ukraine and NATO. Another topic moderators asked about were the candidates' ages and their competency. 78-year-old Trump would be 82 at the end of his term. Trump says that he has aced recent cognitive tests, which he shared with the public, and that he is in good physical shape. Biden, age 81, would be 86 at the end of his term. But throughout the debate, President Biden seemed to struggle to clearly communicate, often correcting himself in the moment or losing train of thought.
Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look.
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look.
This public stumble has led to rumors that Biden will be replaced with another candidate for the Democratic Party. To provide reaction and analysis on the debate, we are joined once again by two Catholic scholars who write extensively on the intersection of the Catholic faith and politics. Francis Maier is a senior fellow in the Catholic Studies program at the Ethics and Public Policy Center. And Dr. Kenneth Craycraft is professor of moral theology at Mount St. Mary's Seminary and School of Theology in Cincinnati, Ohio. Gentlemen, welcome back to our program. During the debate this week, there was an extended exchange on the abortion issue. Let's take a listen to that.
The Supreme Court just approved the abortion bill, and I agree with their decision to have done that, and I will not block it. He's willing to, as we say, rip the baby out of the womb in the 9th month and kill the baby. Nobody wants that to happen, Democrat or Republican. Nobody wants it to happen.
That is simply not true. The Roe v. Wade does not provide for that. That's not the circumstance. Only if a woman's life is in danger, she's going to die. That's the only circumstance in which that can happen. But we are not for late-term abortion, period. Period.
I don't want to pass over the fact that we just heard former President Trump say that he does support abortion pills, which are the most common form of abortion today. Gentlemen, what stood out to you on where the candidates fell on the abortion issue? Fran, I'll start with you.
Well, neither of them was a Catholic perspective. I mean, I think that former President Trump was the better of the two positions. I think he was fairly articulate on the matter. It's not what we would want, but it's certainly better than the current administration supports. So in general, I think he did very well on that issue.
Ken, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, first of all, Biden seems to think that with the stroke of a presidential pen, he can restore the status quo ante-Dobbs case from a couple of years ago and restore Roe v. Wade. That isn't going to happen. Moreover, of course, he misrepresented what Roe stood for. Roe, together with its companion case Doe versus Bolton, certainly did permit abortion up to the time of birth, full-term abortions. So he misrepresented that, and of course, that's the position that he would like to restore somehow. Of course, it's not a federal question anymore, so in some sense, the argument is moot, but it does show where the candidates stand. In terms of Trump, I agree with Fran that certainly Trump's position is better than Biden's, but it would be a mistake to call Trump a pro-life candidate. He took some public policy positions in his first term that he knew would appeal to a certain voters bloc, and he fulfilled those. But President Trump in his second term is not going to fight for the rights of the unborn. He essentially has already said that he's more or less washed his hands of that issue, and that now it's up to the states. And since it's not a federal issue, in his mind, then there's no point in talking about it very much anymore.
I should also point out President Biden said that he is against late-term abortion, but that seems to go against a lot of the messaging from the Democratic Party as well. On this same topic, pro-life leader Lila Rose posted on X during the debate, quote, Trump's policy, okay with killing most babies. Biden's policy, okay with killing all. Not a very great contrast. So again, just to follow up on this, do pro-life voters have a candidate this election? Ken?
Well, that's a very difficult question, and I think it's really going to be up to the conscience of the individual voter. I don't mean to punt on this case at all, but on the other hand, it isn't clear that there is a pro-life candidate, and it's also not clear that there is a candidate that clearly stands out as one that a Catholic can vote for in good conscience, even if the pro-life issue is the one issue. So I'm not sure that there's a candidate in the two major parties that a Catholic can look to as the candidate to vote for on this particular issue. And of course, there are other issues that are important as well, and we shouldn't dismiss those. Right. But in terms of abortion, I wouldn't call former President Trump a pro-life candidate. Certainly, he's not an advocate for abortion the way that Biden is, but that's a far cry from calling him a pro-life candidate and calling him a candidate that, at least from the abortion point of view or the abortion debate, that Trump would be the person to vote for.
Fran, did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I look at it. Ken and I, there's really no distance in our views. I mean, I feel that I felt that he was very sincere, Trump, when he was talking about the obscenity of late-term abortion. And Ken is correct. The President Biden was just, clueless in terms of what what Roe v. Wade actually legitimized. And that was very disturbing. Neither of these guys was impressive last night. I mean, the whole thing was rather embarrassing. And actually, I had to get up and walk away a few times to prevent myself from blowing a gasket. But I was struck by Trump's, at least his sincerity on the late-term abortion issue. He's not perfect by any means. He's simply not a pro-life candidate. But between the two, if you have to choose, he does have, on that issue, he has the better position.
Well, speaking of other important topics, the topic of immigration was also debated. Let's take a listen to what the candidates had to say.
When he was president, he was separating babies from their mothers, putting them in cages, making sure the families were separated. That's not the right way to go.
We had the safest border in history. Now we have the worst border in history. There's never been anything like it. And people are dying all over the place.
What should Catholic voters take away from the immigration topic at this week's debate? And were there other moments that stood out to you as significant? Fran, I'll go to you first.
Well, I think the border is a genuine mess, and I don't think the current administration has done anywhere nearly enough to solve that problem. It's just a terrible embarrassment. I think in general, though, on the Trump side, his narcissism was really offensive. I think he refused to engage certain issues that were very important ones, like Social Security, child care, things like that he just simply ignored. On the other hand, Biden was just not even there half the time. So it's terrible to have this conversation because it's like late Roman Republic behavior. It really is deeply disturbing. In terms of how to think about the election, the best advice I can give is to simply download a copy of the 1998 Living the Gospel of Life statement that the bishops made. It's on their website, Living the Gospel of Life, 1998. And it really is a very simple, short, and very direct and clear directive about how to think about Catholic citizenship and the importance of voting. I don't know beyond that, I don't know really how to advise on this.
Ken, any thoughts in regards to the immigration exchange or other moments at the debate?
Yeah, on immigration, I want to highlight this because this is a very important topic that Catholics need to pay more attention to. And the way that I would characterize both candidates is that they want to fix with a sledgehammer what requires the care of a scalpel. And on both sides, you don't have anybody showing any kind of nuance. And what really dismays me about the immigration policy is that both sides reduce migrants to political pawns. On the one hand, you have President Trump using anecdotal, tragic to be sure, and I don't want to downplay, but anecdotal examples of immigrants committing crimes. On the other hand, you have Biden basically using immigration as a political cudgel to beat his opponents over the head. What's missing in both of those are authentic problems related to immigration, especially immigration related to persecution, political and religious persecution, which need to be separated from economic migration. You don't see that. You don't see those kinds of debates. And I think that's very disappointing. I would echo Fran's concern about both candidates, Trump's narcissism and Trump's refusal to take a responsibility for his own moral shortcomings. And Biden, we have to be careful that we don't tease, make fun, laugh. But the fact is, Biden is a tragic candidate at this point. I don't believe that he's intellectually fit to hold office, and I think that was demonstrated last night. I think the Democratic Party is scrambling because of that.
On that very point, with my brief remaining amount of time with you both, I want to get to this because, to your point, the major headline following the debate was Biden's poor performance. And I say this with all due respect, but it was hard to watch him openly fumble his words on stage. So how do we as voters, as Catholic voters, balance respecting the dignity of someone who is aging and is elderly with also justly judging whether someone is competent for the highest office? Ken, I'll go to you first, and then Fran, you'll get the last word.
Well, first of all, we have to make that distinction. To say that we have to have sympathy and even empathy for someone who is struggling with what clearly looks to me like dementia is one thing, but to say that that person should be president of the United States is quite another. So certainly we should be empathetic, but that doesn't mean that he wins our vote because of that empathy. And I think both his family and his party have a moral responsibility to look hard at themselves as to why they're putting this man out there as a candidate when clearly he's not up to the job.
Fran, just a moment left. What are your thoughts?
Well, I agree with Ken on the really the embarrassment of this man's competence right now, and it does deserve our sympathy. But I just don't know how the Democratic Party replaces him, because he was advanced as a candidate of the center and turned out to be something else, and everybody behind him is more extreme than he is. So I don't know where we are. I mean, I've never been, and I'm 75. I have never been in this circumstance before, where we're just in this situation where both candidates are equally unpleasant. There was a time I can remember when I might not vote for a Democratic candidate, but I respected them, and I respected the Republican candidate as well. It's just not. It's just a very weird time.
It is, and we're going to have to leave it at that. But as always, we are grateful for you both. Thank you.